Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Tuesday night's Emotional Awareness Live discussion. We've had some amazing speakers over the weeks, and tonight I'd like to bring in something a little bit different now and again. And tonight we have something a little different, and I'm really excited about this actually. I have with me tonight Darlene A Mayo. She is officially a doctor of neurosurgery, which is amazing. You're the first doctor I've had on the show that I'm aware of.
Wonderful.
And tonight's topic is going to be about Darlene's book, where she's learned to blend faith and science in her book, The Science of God's Healing. So welcome to the show. It's amazing to see you.
Oh, thank you so much, Kay. It's my pleasure to be here.
You're very welcome. Very welcome. So, wow, starting off neurosurgery. What took you into neurosurgery to begin with? What was it about it that excited you, or did you enjoy about that?
Yeah, so, I was born to heal, very interestingly. I've always had a passion for that since I was very, very young. And
wow.
then when I was in college, I knew I wanted to go to medical school, but I didn't know what field yet. I knew I loved working with my hands, and I had the opportunity to shadow different physicians in different fields. And the first time I saw a brain surgery and I started studying about the intricacies of the human brain, that as much as we know about the human body, we know this much about the brain. I was fascinated by that. And I said, I am going to do something that I can explore, because I love to be an explorer also. And so I was drawn to that immediately. I went into medical school with the intention of becoming a neurosurgeon, and that is exactly what I did.
Wow. That is incredible. Wow. And I think it's the first time I've ever actually had a conversation with a neurosurgeon. Thankfully, I've not had to go under the knife of one ever, not yet.
Yes, that's not something you want. You definitely want to have to do.
Fascinating topic, my goodness. But it's very physical, isn't it, as opposed to emotional. So it's, but I'm sure in that career you must have seen a huge shift in people's emotions through work you did as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. From my patient standpoint, even, they teach us in medical school to focus on the technical aspects, right? There's very little training about how to even interact with other people, how to interact with your patients. But as you can imagine, in my field, I'm dealing with life and death situations in a lot of cases, and having to deliver some very difficult news to people. So learning emotional awareness, it was integral to my profession. And ultimately, it became very, very difficult for me to continue, because to have these conversations with someone and say, we've done all we can do, frankly, I really, it hurt me, because I'm a very empathic person, right? It would hurt me to have to deliver that over and over again. And I said, you know what? I need to do something where I can stop saying I've done all I can do. And I'm very blessed now to be in a field where there is always more. So.
Yeah. And yet there must be so many other people where doing everything you could do was a lifesaver in so many ways, and not just their life, but the family as well. Sure. So that's amazing, all the people around them. And I think for a lot of people going through something like that as well, they must have a lot of them would have quite a shift in their own mindset as a result of coming through something so traumatic as neurosurgery. Yeah. You hear these people have this like wake up call, don't they? And they're like, this traumatic experience has created a new purpose in their life. So you have done some amazing work. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. So going on to that, you are now an author of 4 books, you say?
Yes.
Amazing. And today you've chosen to talk about the science of God's healing.
Yes.
Where you've chosen to blend your knowledge of neurosurgery with faith.
Absolutely.
So please tell us more about how this came about, this step.
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned, I've been a healer my whole life, but my understanding of what that was for a very long time was very narrow, right? It was from medical school and very traditional. Another aspect of me that is as critical to me as healing is my faith in God. And I saw this as two separate worlds for a very, very long time. And then as I began to study more about the brain, I began to understand that there's a spiritual side to healing as well as this physical side. And honestly, in order to be completely healed, we have to have healing in our spirit, in our mind, and in our body, right? We cannot just focus on one aspect of a person, because we are created as both spiritual beings and physical beings. So we have to pay attention to that. And so what I did is, as I had decided to leave my career as a neurosurgeon a few years ago now, I retired very early. And I said, well, you know what? I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew that I had to get this message across about holistic healing. So I wrote a book, was the very first thing that I did. And I showed individuals different ways that they could access healing from a non-traditional standpoint. Okay, so a lot of holistic healing methods. And then I began to integrate, as I would read through, I'm a Christian, I would read through the Bible, I would see scriptures that I would read in a different way, right? When you have a neurosurgeon's brain, you read them a little differently. And I would see the science behind them. And I would say, oh my goodness, that makes so much sense. And so I put together the book that I've just written, The Science of God's Healing Power, is literally an explanation from a scientific standpoint of what a lot of people understand or even don't understand about supernatural healing, because there's connections between the spiritual realm and the physical realm. And when you understand that, it makes it very accessible. Healing is very accessible to absolutely every person on the earth. And that is a really central tenet to the message of my book.
Wow, that's a very powerful message too. And yes, is available for everybody, but it's being aware of that and knowing how to tap into it, like you say, is such an important message to put out there.
Yes.
So yeah, it sounds like we've on a similar journey, but from a very different standpoint. Because you've gone from neurosurgery to blending science with faith. I've gone from parenting to emotional expert in a different way. But the messages are still the same about, I like what you say about the physical realm. Because everything that we say and think and do, we talk about in physical terms.
Yes.
And when we can actually relate those physical terms back to emotional terms and really, like you said, understand them, it makes such a difference in, like you say, being able to access those things. Like for me, it's like maps emotionally. If you treat the emotional cycle like a map, then you know when you're lost, where you are, where you've got to go, what journey to take. And being able to relate to real life things is better than it just being this big concept of something nobody understands. So
so absolutely, emotions to me, when I think about those, when you're feeling deep sadness, when you're feeling deep anxiety, right, that is an indicator that there is something out of alignment, okay, in you. This is how I interpret this. All right, so I'd love to talk about that a little bit, because most people, they consider their emotions as a thermostat, right? Rather than a thermometer, all right? So your emotions are designed to give you a clue that something is wrong. And let me give you an example of what I mean by this. If you take your temperature with a thermometer and you see that your temperature is 40 degrees Celsius, right? Something's wrong. So what are you going to do? You're going to go to the doctor. You're going to take some medication. You're going to rest. You're going to drink fluids, right? You fix the problem. When most people become depressed, when they become anxious, what do? We sit in that emotion for an extended period of time, right? That's the same thing as taking your temperature, a physical temperature, seeing you have a temp of 40 degrees Celsius and saying, oh, well, I guess that's what this is. I guess I have a temperature of 40 degrees. And it becomes very, very harmful, when instead, if we would recognize that there's something out of alignment, is the reason we're feeling depressed, is the reason we're feeling anxious, and then get help to understand that and correct it, then it prevents a lot of downstream problems and it helps accelerate the healing process.
Yeah, and it says, like you say, a lot of people just don't don't even acknowledge these emotional issues to begin with. And that's why I love the term emotional awareness.
Yes.
Because it's like, how can you fix something you're not aware of? If you've got a leak in your pipe somewhere, if you don't know it, you're not going to go and fix it. But the minute you do know it, how many people just go, oh, it's only dripping, and they just leave it. And it's the same, you know, you have to be aware of something and acknowledge it and take action to fix it. So it's those two steps, but the awareness must come first. And that's so important. Is the message, you know, that's for me, is the message I want to get out, is this emotional awareness. So same with you, you know, to be able to recognize that and taking temperature. I like that one about taking temperature. I see it as sort of a bit of hot and cold. Yeah. As I talk on I always get the wrong hand up here, red and blue, the hot and cold on my emotional cycle. So yeah, absolutely brilliant. And so then when they've got this state of depression and they're not aware of it, and you're like trying to get the message across,
yes,
where from there? That's the next piece most people want to know. And I think the first thing they're most afraid of is, as we were talking a little bit about backstage, is being termed a mental health patient.
Yes.
And that very often is not necessarily where we want to be taking them. We want to take them to a person who's got to head towards a better journey. So how do you go about that? Because I think if I saw it earlier, is it transformational coaching you do, or breakthrough coaching?
I do breakthrough coaching, which is also transformational coaching. Absolutely. So I teach people how to accelerate healing, right? Because first of all, you have to understand that just because somebody has given you a label of depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, obsessive compulsive, whatever that label is, that is not who you are as a person. No. People begin to adopt the identity of a condition that they have been labeled with a lot of times. And that is really sad and detrimental. And I know this is an important point for you too, because you are not depression. You are not anxiety, right? That is an experience that you are going through that is meant to be temporary. It is not meant to be permanent, right? But so a lot of the coaching that I do, a lot of the consulting I do is helping you to understand your true identity, the gifts, the talents, the skills that you are created with, right? And then you begin this vision for your life, the purpose for your life. It begins to unveil itself to you, right? And that is, it's a kind of roundabout way to approach this, because as a doctor, of course, I would prescribe medication for someone who is depressed, and it works on the brain chemicals and this and that. That's fine and good. And, you know, I'm not going to get into a discussion too much about medication, but what I do want to say is that is not the only way. That is absolutely not the only way. And for me, what I've seen, the breakthrough in my clients is when they connect with their true identity, how they were created initially, with the purpose, with the plan, because you're here for a reason. If you're alive, if you're listening to us talk, you have a purpose. You have a purpose on this earth, right? And the sooner that you understand that and understand how you are uniquely suited to fulfill that purpose, no one else can fulfill that purpose the way you do. Literally, the depression, the anxiety, everything, it goes away. It literally goes away. So it's a very powerful way to approach a problem that is very different, but it's very, very effective. I mean, folks that I've worked with who have had, there was a young woman that I worked with who had postpartum depression, struggled for, her child was 7 years old by the time she came to me, and she was still deep in depression. I will tell you, within 3 months, there was enough of a difference that her husband came to me and said, I don't know what you're doing, but thank you. And within 6 months, she literally was over this and doesn't need to be a client anymore, which is fantastic, right? I'm not in the interest of keeping clients for years and years because we're not doing something right. If that's the case, it's get in. That's the surgery part, the surgeon part of me, right? Get in, fix the problem, accelerate the healing process, and then go on and live the life you're meant to live.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, one of the things I find amazing is how these conversations come together, and we've never spoken before today.
Yeah.
But the people who watch my show more often, we don't have a big viewing at the moment, but it's growing. But I always get the right hand one day. The little emotional cycle I've got up here, this little diagram.
Yes.
Like you were saying about finding that purpose, we've only got 4 core emotional states. That's happy, sad, angry, and depressed. And that's the 4 colours up here. So if you're only going to be in one of them 4, if you're not going to work towards the happiness, and like you said, find that purpose that you have in life, work towards those goals to make yourself happy and actually do that with a purpose, then you are going to live in one of the other 3 states. So it's that simple in some sense. But yes, the world makes outside changes, but we can't control what the world does, but we can control that little bit in the middle, which is what we change and what we do. So that's my interpretation of the world from parenting side. And yet you've come with this neurological faith side, and yet we're still sharing that same pattern. That's what's so amazing. And right, this is what people need to realize. They have that choice, and they just need that knowledge of, yes, go for it, find that purpose, find that passion. Happiness isn't going to come to us, we have to go to it.
It's true. Well, we create it. You can create it. One of the amazing things about the human brain is that whatever you ruminate on, right? Every time you think a thought repeatedly, you start to form pathways in your brain, right? Just like as you walk through the woods, one time you may form a little pathway. You walk that path 100 times and it's very well defined, right? Same thing happens in your brain. So you start to lay down tracks. And the more times you have the same thought or listen to someone else tell you that thought, equally as important, right? You form eventually what I call super highways of thought in your brain. Okay. It becomes very easy for you to go down that thought process. This is how we develop perspective in life, right?
Yes.
And what can happen is that if we repeatedly believe things about ourselves that are not true, that we believe we are limited, right? Then that reality is created. It literally changes the physical structure in your brain. All right. So if you're going to ruminate on something happy, ruminate on a what if possibility in a good way, right? What if I had a magic wand and what in this dream that is within me actually comes into existence? Do you know what your brain does? When you focus on the what that you want, right? This God-given vision that we have over our lives, your brain will start from where you are right now, and it will start forming new connections, new pathways until it gets to where you have told it you want to be. It does that all on its own. It's amazing. It's a miracle.
Yes. Oh, wow. Yeah. And that's incredible because I went through a lot last year myself.
Yes.
And I know what it was like because I'd been married for 28 years. So I'd had a lot of words in my head that had been said to me a lot.
Sure.
And every time you sit down and you have a quiet moment or you doubt yourself for something you do, I'm writing my book, I'm setting up my business, I'm doing the live shows, trying to connect with people around the business. And it's like, you get these doubts going on. And when you do, you straight away hear all those voices and you're like, no, stop. And like you said, you literally almost physically have to sit and force your brain to think of something different. So it's not a natural feeling to do that and tread those new pathways. You have to do it with a purpose. You have to put those challenges in that push comfort zones to achieve things that will create those happier pathways. And it's hard work. And I think that's the thing. A lot of people want to give up because it feels like hard work. But it's also hard work living in stress and depression and anxiety. So if you're going to do something hard, do the happy one, as tough as it is. But
yeah, absolutely. It does take more energy in the brain, physical energy, to create a new pathway than to reinforce a pathway that's already there, which is why people tend to get stuck in these emotional responses, right? Because it takes less energy. If you have a depressed pathway in your brain, it takes less energy to go down that pathway than to say, you know what? No, I'm not going to think like that today. I'm going to choose to believe I'm going to choose to have faith that something good is coming my way, right? That I'm going to believe the scriptures that I read. Today, I'm going to choose to do that, right? Yeah. So when you do that, it takes a lot more energy the first time to create that new pathway. But guess what? The more times you do that, literally, scientists have studied this. It takes less and less energy each and every time that you have that same thought. So eventually, it becomes your default way of thinking. right? Your faith in God, your faith in life, your faith in other people, it becomes your default way of thinking. And when you get to that point, it's not that you'll never have a negative thought again, but when those thoughts come, it's easy to just push them aside, right? Because you're on the super highway of truth and happiness, right? Instead of this super highway of depression.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where the affirmation side is really powerful, isn't it? So if you don't have those beliefs yourself at the moment, and this is where I know you're sort of talking a lot from the faith side, the Bible is full of lots of what essentially are affirmations and positive ways to live. But if somebody doesn't want the Bible, it's finding other affirmations and things that are written specifically to be positive and reading them until you believe them. And like I said, after coming out of a 28-year marriage last year, believe me, my self-belief was extremely low.
I can imagine.
And I made a list of about 20 and I stuck them on my mirror and got up every morning and I read them out loud about 3 times every morning. And after a few days, you start to feel a shift in that energy and how you say them out and deliver them. And then what I did was every day I actually read one out and thought, you know what, I actually believe that today. I got a highlighter and I highlighted it yellow. Until eventually I could highlight the whole list. And you know what, I do believe these about myself. But it took so much effort. It wasn't easy. So it's not like we're sitting here going, oh, you know, it's just stuff you do and, you know, trust us. It really does work. And, you know, I'm in such a different place now to what I was last summer. So yeah, Dawn said a little while ago, and it is possible and so worth it. Yvette says, finding the root of your problem and knowing the right path to follow. This is very interesting. Well done, ladies. Thank you, ladies. Very lovely. So yes, always hard work, but worth it. And I think that's the thing, is finding that motivation to keep going and accepting as well. Some days you want to give up, you want to sit down, you want to commiserate, but allow that to happen some days and then get up and get on again the next day. But also I think when you fight it too hard, you fight progress as well. So it's finding that balance between time to rest and time to progress, isn't it?
Yeah, so I want to speak to that a little bit because affirmations are very interesting with the brain. And I'm going to share with you something. I love what you did, that you highlighted the one that you believed that day. And there's a reason why that was so important to you and probably accelerated this process for you. So your identity centers in the brain are very, very powerful. So who you believe you are, whether it's the truth or not, okay? When you are presented with an opposing thought, opposing viewpoint, like let's say, you know I'm a doctor, I have a medical degree, right? And somebody comes to me and says, oh, you don't know anything about medicine. Well, my identity is very firm in what my training is and what my knowledge is. So I say, well, of course that is, right? But what if you take somebody who is designed, okay, is meant to maybe lead a movement, okay, but they don't feel like a leader. They don't believe they're a leader. And someone comes in, even a coach, consultant can come in and say, you're meant to lead. You know, I believe that you're supposed to lead. You know what their brain will do if they don't believe that? It'll kick out that thought like a virus.
Yeah,
absolutely. But here's the situation. When you, and the way I teach affirmations, it's a little different. I use scripture and I use faith because as you connect with God, those day-to-days that are hard are a lot less often. Okay. So for me, that it has to be essential, but I mean, yes, can you do it without God? You can, it's a lot harder. But here's the thing. When I teach affirmations, I teach people to say, I am becoming more and more like this characteristic or like this quality, right? I am becoming a leader. And here is some evidence in my life of that. I was able to tell my child, like start with something simple. I was able to direct my child and lead them in a way of safety today. That is a leadership quality. Therefore, I am a leader. I am becoming more of a leader each and every day. As you do that, it's very hard for your brain to kick out that thought, right? Because it's presented with evidence. So when you took that affirmation and you said, you know what, maybe I don't believe these other 19 today, but this one I believe, you were actually able to reinforce that pathway in that moment, rather than if you had chosen instead to say, no, I don't want that affirmation today. I want this affirmation today, even though you don't feel like it, you would have been doing more damage to the process by trying to force yourself to say and feel something that you didn't feel. So isn't that amazing about the brain?
Yes, yeah, that is incredible. And as I say, it does take time, but that belief is important, but it takes practice to believe. And yeah, it's incredible. But like you said, the neuroscience behind it as well is just such a powerful message.
It is.
And I think neuroplasticity, the term, isn't it?
Yes, it is. That's the ability of the brain to change. Physical structure and brain chemistry can change as well too, because there are, facts are true that when you have depression, when you have anxiety, the chemicals in your brain are not produced in the right amount, and they do not function in the way they are designed to. Okay, that's just a fact. And that doesn't mean we have to approach it from a medicine standpoint. But you will see that neuroplasticity includes increasing the production of the dopamine, the serotonin, the oxytocin in your brain that gives you that elevation in mood. And you can see that scientifically.
Yeah. And it takes time as well, because some days you'll do that and you'll do these affirmations and you'll do things on positive, and you get out in like getting out in nature and fresh air is another really good one as well.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I actually feel really good today. And then the next day you're like right back to square one. But I think as you keep doing it, you find less and less of those days happening. And it is about not giving up and thinking, oh, it doesn't work. But it's just, what, today's a day off, today's a rest day. And then we get back on it tomorrow, or maybe by the evening, but it's never giving up. And I think that's the biggest message I've always wanted to give people a hope for, is never give up.
Right.
Always keep going at it, because nobody else is going to do it for you.
That's true. Nobody can. Nobody can. It's like nobody can go to the gym and exercise for you and build your muscles, right? You've got to go and do that. But I love what you said. It's about, I call it giving yourself grace, right? And saying, all right, you know what? Today may not be a day for greatness, and that is okay. But what I encourage my clients to do is keep records of how you're doing. Like, how many days this week did you wake up feeling great versus not great? And then measuring that over time to see your progress, because sometimes we don't remember. We don't remember where we were, right? I had one client, and she was single, and so she didn't have a lot of interaction with individuals. And so after a couple of months, she said, I just don't know that I'm getting any better. I know I like these techniques and strategies. And then what happened was this is why I actually started making them do this journal and keep a record of how they were doing, because she ran into a friend of hers that she had not seen in a while. And her friend said, wow, you are a completely different person. So someone else coming in from the outside that's not living in your day-to-day may recognize your transition, but why wait for that, right? That's not out of our control. But what is in our control, right, is keeping that record yourself and seeing. And that's why I like coaching. That's why I like consulting along those lines, because you have somebody that can help you, right? It's very hard when I admire you, Kay, for being able to do this on your own. I mean, that is amazing. You are a very strong woman to be able to do that. And I applaud you for that. So many folks would, really struggle, especially so quick.
All on my own.
Well,
I did have some support, and I think that's another thing that is also important as well, is when you're struggling to believe in yourself, like you say, or believe in positive thinking, is sometimes, and say last week's speaker, Brian Miller, all about the human connection was incredible. So if anybody hasn't seen that, go back and find last week's, and I'll put the link to YouTube as well. But human connection is also really, really important in helping us with belief. And if the people around you are giving you those wrong messages, change your circle of influence as well, because that has a really powerful change on your neuroplasticity again, and having somebody that believes in you. And I just managed to know the right people to connect with at the right time when I was at rock bottom.
That's wonderful.
And knew that they would support what I did and believe what I did. And wow, again, the transformation was quite powerful. Because I rang a book coach and said, right, I want my book out by spring. And I forgot that he was an empowerment coach. He said, well, why not by Christmas? And my book was out for Christmas, and this was November. So
wonderful. That's great.
So having somebody else believe in you is powerful as well. But at the same time, if they believe in you, but you don't believe in yourself, you're still not going to achieve anything. But it's just having that extra bit. It's like having somebody with a float or a life jacket for you. Just give you that little bit of extra float to get you there. And for people who are quite lonely, and this last year, I think this is really important.
Yes.
People who are very lonely, and they feel like they're missing that human connection. Like you said a little while ago, about the faith and believing in the scriptures and the Bible, etc., it's a form of human connection, even if it's a spiritual form.
Mm-hmm.
And it's having somebody to believe in, and knowing that the words that they're reading are a belief in who they are as well, you know, providing that belief. And I think that's why it's so powerful as well. It's like having somebody with you all the time, isn't it?
Absolutely. Because sometimes, you know, especially in this last year, a lot of us have been alone, you know, and unable to connect with others, and not, I cannot imagine having, I have a husband, I have children, but I can't even imagine going through this last year without having God to connect to personally. You know, for me, it is critical, it is essential, but that community, you're right, it is so, so important, because what you see and what you hear other people telling you, as we talked about, right, that is getting into your mind. And that's one of the reasons why, in addition to the coaching and consulting that I do, I run a community, a healing community filled with people that are always building up and encouraging others, because it's just, you know, and again, I'm one person, I can do so much, right? But bringing together like-minded individuals who have that belief that healing is possible for everyone, and it doesn't have to take forever. That, you know, that source of encouragement is very, very powerful. And I'll tell you this too, which you probably may not know, is one of your happiness brain chemicals called oxytocin. It is released even in times like this connection we're doing right now. Okay. Even through the computer screen, we have oxytocin increasing in our brain. Yes, by talking to each other and connecting and listening and responding to each other, you're getting an oxytocin spike. If you are watching this right now, whether you're live, whether you're on replay, you are getting an oxytocin spike in your brain, which is going to give you a little happiness boost, which is a great thing. So.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's why doing the 28-day live challenge actually saved me through that second lockdown.
Absolutely.
Like, oh my God, what am I going to do on my own for 28 days? I'm one of these people who I need that human connection. And that was where it was like, do you know what? I've got a computer. I can talk, get online and do this every night for an hour. And that really helped me through by giving me that, like you said, that dose of oxytocin every day to build my confidence, build my belief, build my positive feelings. And there were days where I probably sat here all days crying my eyes out, and then got on the line that was like, hello, how are you? And I really did fight through some of those days, but we got there. And it was actually Dawn Crystal, who's watching tonight. I connected with her through doing that, and she came on as my guest speaker, and she's been on twice now. And I'm sure she's loving this tonight, because Dawn does like angel healing as well as like the Bach flower remedies. So she's got her own little community where she does lots of energy healing as well. So I'm sure she's loving this tonight.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
So you perhaps have to connect afterwards.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, no, amazing. So yeah, oxytocin. So oxytocin, because again, it's like this little color cycle. I always get the wrong hand. The color cycle up here again. I think the chemistry fits really well with the dynamics of this.
Yes.
Because oxytocin, like you said, as a spike, it's something that lifts us up into that yellow.
Yes.
Whereas you've got your cortisol and your
yes.
I've got blank. I'm not a neuroscientist.
Yeah, I know, but yeah, cortisol. Yeah, that's a tough one, and that's your stress hormone that gets released, right? And people don't realize what this does, right? They know that it's meant to serve a very specific purpose, right? What happens is usually when you are afraid, okay, when you are afraid, you get this adrenaline rush. First thing that happens, right? Your brain is in your body is designed that way so that you can literally physically run away from whatever your
red side. Yeah, the red side to the adrenaline action.
So what happens after that is cortisol gets released, and one of its purposes is actually to replace the adrenaline that you've just used. So you're ready the next time you need to run away from whatever it is, right? If we are in a chronically positive state, right, and we have nice levels of our dopamine, serotonin, and we are nutritionally supporting our body, then guess what? It's very easy to replace that adrenaline. But if you are either nutritionally depleted, or if you are chronically in a depressed state or an anxious state, then what cortisol does is it goes for all that it can find, and it actually will grab the components of your dopamine, your serotonin, your oxytocin. It will break them down in order to recreate the adrenaline, to put it back together. Okay. So you wind up going into an even deeper state of depression, a deeper state of anxiety. Okay. It is really amazing what cortisol, the power that cortisol has. But one of the things that I teach too is how to capture your fear at the adrenaline stage, right? Because if you can capture it there, you can actually harness the increased power that is created electrically in your brain, and you can redirect it. You can redirect it for a passion, for your purpose. And it is wonderful when that happens, because cortisol never gets released in that case. It just doesn't get released, or it gets released at a very, very slow, steady rate. So you don't have this immediate drop in.
I've got my brain ticking over now, because I'm one of these people that's always had these like sudden rush of adrenaline, and I'm like, but I don't know what to do with it. And then you sit there like, oh. So I can very much relate to that from a point. I've always been a very fear-based person. But yes, I understand that if you can turn that fear, if I understand what I'm afraid of, it helps me, or the fear helps me to understand what information I'm missing. And if I can gather that information, it then gives me drive to achieve more and push my comfort zones. But I think fear is something that you don't know yet. But when you learn it, you overcome the fear. And but there's plenty of things where I think, well, I don't need to know them. I'll just stick with fear, because I don't have to face it every day.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. But if you can learn to harness it, I mean, that's powerful. So one of the easy redirects that I give folks is because when you're in fear, your brain, the thinking, reasoning part of your brain, your cortex, it sort of shuts down. I mean, not totally shuts down, but your ability to think and reason is very, very limited in that case. So what I say is, ask yourself a question, any question that requires some thought to answer, not a yes, no question, right? You can ask yourself a question like, I wonder, that's a good one. I wonder what it would be like to take a trip to Bali. Okay. Literally something totally off topic. What that does is it forces the blood flow up to your cortex. It wakes up your brain, and it is the first process to abort the fear response. Then what you can do, now that you're thinking and reasoning, it's good to figure out why you're afraid, but not while you're afraid. Okay. It's better to do it at a separate time. When you first feel that fear, you wake up your brain with that little technique that I showed you. And then what you do is you use it to connect with the vision for your life, the purpose for your life, a desire, a dream that you have. All right. Then you actually harness that energy. You send it to the part of your brain, my favorite part of the brain. It's called the mirror neuron network. It actually, that's the part of your brain that'll connect what's in the spiritual and the physical realm. It will bring your dreams into reality. It's what some people call is for manifestation. That is the part of your brain that is active. So when you feel that fear, you ask yourself a silly question that causes you to think, then you immediately start focusing on the fulfillment, not the how, but the what of what you want, right? The what of your vision, of your dream, of your passion. And that energy all gets diverted to this part of your brain, and it accelerates the brain going from where you are to where you've told it you want to be. It's very amazing. Wow. So try that next time that you get in that state, and I'd love to hear how that works.
I have got to get a copy of your book. This just sounds incredible. Reminds me, actually, I'm just going to pop a comment in of the link to the book. So if anybody's interested, The Science of God's Healing Power, that's now in the chat. Fear. So facing fear. So the other one I think a lot of people struggle with is the kind of past the fear, but don't know how to get over a challenge, or they're like, know they've got to get through something, but don't know how. And that's where the stress side comes in, doesn't it? The stress and the anger and frustration, or it could even just be mild irritability. But that's all of what I call over on the red side, all those like really powerful sort of, again, overwhelming emotions that lead more to the burnout side.
Right.
So again, about getting through that. So many different challenges we have emotionally, like you say, with depression, with the stress, with the anxiety, with the stress, all it's like the brain is crazy, and yet all of these chemistries and these emotional states are designed for a purpose. But in today's world, we don't use them for the purpose they were designed for, living in caves and running away from lions and hunting berries. And so trying to fit all of that in today's purpose is just, yeah.
Yeah, it can definitely be a challenge, but here's the situation. So your brain, in addition to having all these chemicals, it goes through certain frequencies. So you may have heard about this, like delta frequency is when you're in deep sleep, right? Restorative. And then gamma is your really high, fast frequency when you're learning, right? So that stress state, your red there, is when your brain is in what's called high beta. Okay, that's just under gamma. It's one of the very, very fast rhythms. Your brain is designed to be in that for a very short burst of time in order to solve a specific problem. Okay. What happens is when we sit there and we get stressed and we say, I've got to figure out a solution to this. I don't know how I'm going to do this. I've got to make a list of 20 things to do and da, 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 da. You get in that spin cycle. Your brain gets stuck, literally stuck in this high beta state. Okay. We have clinical studies. You have a way to look at pictures of the brain and see what frequency they are in, right? And you can see, and when it gets stuck in this frequency, you see red. Actually, interesting. So I love that color. Okay, it's perfect. So you can't, you're unable to hear, because your inner wisdom that you have within you, that you're born with, right? That can only be tapped into as we start to slow down our brain waves. You actually have to get your brain in a theta state. Okay, it's a meditation state. It's a prayer state. All right, they've done studies on this. When you get your brain slowed down, then you can connect with that inner wisdom that is inside you, right? And then the solution comes up. But many times we can't turn it off, right? That's why that's why sometimes if you can go to sleep and get deep, restful sleep, you'll wake up with a solution to a problem, right? It's because your brain has gone through that theta rhythm while you're sleeping and it's brought up to the surface. But we can accelerate that I teach people meditative prayer, how to do that and get into that deep meditation through both physical things you do for your body. There's ways to activate that through breathing techniques, right? That are very, very powerful. And then focusing and seeing, using this part of your brain, this mirror neuron network, to see a place of relaxation in your mind, right? And connect with that. You literally put your brain into a theta frequency and you begin to bring up the wisdom, the inner wisdom that you're born with, and you know the next steps to take. It's pretty powerful how that works.
And you know what? Again, I can relate to that so well. You know, I mean, all the years I had my son living at home, it was very stressful trying to deal with him with his suicidal depression and, you know, just really stressful trying to monitor him and help him all the time. But when he moved out of the house and we had space, that's when I started to come up with solutions, because I was still desperately in need of a way to help him, but he was then living in a hostel. It was like, I really need to help him, but I had that space to sit and think.
Yes.
And I actually got to a point where I was able to connect with him enough to say, look, let's sit down and talk in a structured time, like an hour a week or an hour, you know, every couple of days I'd perhaps go down for half an hour and I'd sit with him. And because he knew I was coming and we'd said, we'll sit and talk about emotions and we'd set a structure for it, it was time to sit and really relax and think, and it got him in a better state to learn too. So it's really good both ways, even with teenagers, or for anybody struggling to just have that time to sit and talk and connect and think. But there was one day I was stuck on something about the emotional cycle, trying to think about how, I was trying to think more about how people reacted with other people more than within ourselves. And I was like, I've been thinking about this for days, and I was like, I give up. And I went round my daughter's that evening and we just sat down for a glass of wine, and she looked, forget work, just stop, sit down, relax. And I'd literally drank about, not that I'm saying wine helped, but I just had about half a glass of wine. And then all of a sudden, when I'd forgotten everything I'd been thinking about, my head just went round the world, went, there's all this information. Cool, now deal with that. You've got the answers.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And it was just like that part in X-Men with Xavier goes in with that thing on his head and just sees the universe. And it was just like, it just went, there you go, there's your answers.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. Yeah, that's very true. And that's why that happens. I know a lot of people, we've had that experience, right? You're so focused, so focused, no answers. And then you're like, I just give up, or I'm going to stop thinking about it. And then voila, there's the answer.
Because I was laughing at the fact that I just had half a glass of wine and nearly fell off the settee, because it was literally a physical reaction as it happened. But you better not drink anymore.
Yeah.
Half a glass. But yeah, sometimes it is just, going out for a walk, or putting the telly on, or whatever you do, or let's say some of the right frequency of music. And there's so many amazing musics on YouTube as well, that you
Yes.
can just sit down and put on and let your mind relax. And I love those ones that are like 4K Ultra HD, but they're nature ones with all the birds and the rainforest and the soft music. I like those. So yeah.
Absolutely. Connecting with those nature sounds, whether you can do it in person or whether you do it through, listening to a video or audio, it's very, very powerful for your brain. And it will, there's a whole science behind this of brain entrainment, actually, to help you get into those rhythms that you need. So it's good. If you're in a place where you can step outside, at least for a few minutes every day, even if you're in your own little space, and connect with nature, that is so, so powerful. And that is so healing. Just putting obviously we're in the winter in a lot of places. I'm blessed to be in the southeastern United States, so it's 70 degrees outside where I am. But, whenever you can, to step out in your bare feet on the ground, whether that's sand or earth or whatever it is, right? That actually, it's a very powerful technique to begin to, it affects the energy within you, and it affects your brain chemistry as well. And getting out in the sunshine, if you can, is very powerful. That just a few minutes of sunshine, not only does it help the vitamin D in your body, which you need, but it actually helps your serotonin levels and boost those. Another one of those yellow brain chemicals there.
Yes, yeah. So we're tying in with the colours. It's falling together, isn't it?
Yes.
Because it's just incredible how it does all fit. And that's the thing. I didn't invent something new. All I learned to do was see what everybody talks about, whether it's your point of view from neuroscience, whether it's from faith, whether it's people talking from a counselling point of view, or just people in general who talk about emotions being high and low, or angry and sad, and we talk about all that change. And I just learned to see what people talk about in the form of a diagram, and it was just about bringing that vision into something that I could teach back to people who struggle with the whole concept of emotions being hypothetical when they need something visual to learn. And for my son, who was on the autistic spectrum, he was a visual learner, so that was basically the reason I came up with this, is bringing all that into something visual. So but yes, I'm so fascinated by everything you're telling me tonight. It's incredible. And I think I might one day, if I ever get to a point where I can take time out to study and afford the university fees, I'd love to go on and do philosophy. That would be my nearest thing to never an MD, but my hands would shake too much for that. But I'd love to do the philosophy side. And like you said, the curiosity is another good one, because it drives you to find answers, and answers produce happiness and the oxytocin. And so curiosity in life is another good one. You very rarely see a curious person who's miserable.
Well, it's true. It's true. And your brain is designed for curiosity and learning. Actually, your brain creates new baby brain cells every single day. If you give them something to do, if you employ them for creativity or learning something new, this is why you should learn something new every day, even if it's something small, right? Then those new brain cells actually begin to form more pathways in your brain, helping you progress from where you are to where you want to be, right? But here's what happens. If you don't do anything with them, guess what? They turn into physical toxins in your brain, that now your brain has to spend resources to get rid of those toxins from your brain. So really powerful. So that's why curiosity is so powerful. Curiosity and creativity. So also, even if you don't consider yourself artistic, right? To draw something, to create something, to just that is a wonderful thing for your brain. It's designed for that. It's designed for creativity.
Like anything problem solving and puzzles as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Like curiosity in doing the crossword for a lot of people every day.
Yes.
It's a puzzle in what's this word, and there's the answer, and I got another one, and it can be something that small as doing crosswords, and it could be something massive like doing a whole marathon challenge, depending on who you are and how much oxytocin you need to get through another day. There are people who really need that, and they drive themselves for it, don't they? Like climbing mountains and things that I wouldn't even dream of. They're not.
Yeah, that's not for me, but That
don't
can
even have a
certainly work.
programming. Yeah. So yeah, so I was thinking today actually, because I posted in my group about setting challenges. I was like, oh my goodness, I've got so many challenges in place already for the business, and some for personal. And I'm like, what other challenges can I set? I need some fun ones, something to create space. So I was thinking, do you know what I need to do actually is go back to creating, literally, physically creating space and having another look back at the concept of minimizing. So that's going to be my challenge this year, is to minimize more. So I should be sharing that throughout my group every week. But yeah, but challenges, just something rewarding, and rewarding yourself as well is another good one, isn't it?
Oh yeah, rewards are very powerful, and people forget this too, right? We set these lists of things to do, and we don't want to reward ourselves until we get to the final end result, right? That's actually the worst thing you can do. It's important to set little micro goals and then reward yourself for those, because you get a dopamine spike every time you reward yourself, right? So when someone's trying to, I'll coach authors sometimes too, and they're trying to write the book, and I'll say, okay, you know what? You got the rough draft of one chapter done. You wrote a page. Like, start there, right? What is your reward? And they say, well, that's silly. It took me an hour. And, I say, it's okay. Reward yourself. Go outside, enjoy the sunshine for 5 minutes, whatever that reward is. It doesn't have to be huge, right? But you're reinforcing those pathways. You are encouraging your brain that you want to do more of that. So that positive activity. So those micro rewards are so, so important.
Yeah. So bear with me. I'm just trying to plug in because it's decided to go flat a bit quicker than usual. And I think it's because I'm plugged into a LAN cable today instead of on Wi-Fi. Okay. I'm not sure. I'm just trying to find a charger. Bear with me. Otherwise, we're going to disappear early.
Okay.
Oh, right. I don't know if I've actually got anything that's going to connect in here. Right. Okay. I shall just have to say, if we disappear early, I'll apologise.
No worries. We've had a wonderful discussion so far. So
absolutely. I can't believe we've gone through 50 minutes that quickly. It feels like 5 or 10.
Right.
So, but yeah, brilliant. So any other powerful messages or achievements you've had? Anything you want to tell us?
Yeah, here's what I would say. And we were talking a little bit about this backstage before we came on. And it goes back to the point of identity, which is really very central to overcoming the emotional difficulties, right? Is knowing who you are, all right? Not based on what the world tells you. And I'm going to give you the example that I shared with you backstage, Kay. And that's, as a neurosurgeon, there's a lot of things I loved about being a neurosurgeon and practicing, right? Really wonderful profession. But there was a season for it. And when that season was over, I was ready for it to be over. I listened to a lot of other people tell me, they said, Darlene, you spent 17 years between school and training. And then you spend another 10 years practicing. There is nothing else you can do in your life. And I listened and I believed.
There we go. I'm sorry.
And it was a real problem, right? I think I'm still live, so I'm going to keep talking. If not, that's okay. And here's the thing though, when I sat down and I hired a coach to help me with this, because I said, that can't be true. That can't be true. My entire identity cannot be just wrapped up in neurosurgery, right? There has to be more. And I learned, I connected with I'm a leader, right? That I'm a leader, with the fact that, you know what? I am compassionate. I know how to talk to people. I was able to manage. I was chief of neurosurgery at some point. I knew how to manage budgets. I knew how to do so many different things, right? I was creative. I invented things, right? I would come up with research protocols. And so as I connected with these components of my true identity, of who I really am at the core, I realized that who I am, it was not my profession at all, right? Who I am is a component of all the gifts, the talents, and the skills. And it allowed me to step out into a career that right now is so incredibly fulfilling for me, and where I impact so many more people on a day-to-day basis than I ever could have spending the rest of my career as a neurosurgeon. So I just want to encourage you today, that if you are at a place where you are feeling dissatisfaction with your life, with what you are doing, to understand that there is more for you. There is more that you can do. You are actually created to do more. You are created